today's Cabinet meeting. So firstly, any apologies or declarations of interest? I don't think we've got any apologies. Declarations of interest, I'll just declare that I'm a member of the Redditch Towns Fund Board from the County Council. Is there any other declarations of interest? That's in relation to item 4. Any other items to declare an interest in, colleagues? No? None? Public participation? None? Okay. Can we confirm the minutes from the 22nd of September? Is a true and accurate reflection? We're happy to agree, those colleagues? Yeah? So we'll move into the first item and I'll invite Marcus to present the report. So that's the relocation of Redditch Library. Marcus.
Good morning, Leader, good morning, Cabinet, and everybody else, and indeed all of the viewers at home. Well, I obviously bored everybody on Tuesday afternoon because I was expecting to see rather more people here today, but they obviously were content with what I said on Tuesday. Let me start by formally moving the recommendations on page 1, 1 little a to e inclusive, and set out the narrative and indeed background and position of Worcestershire County Council. It is, of course, our statutory responsibility to ensure that we have a comprehensive and efficient library service. I'm sure you're all fully familiar with the 1964 Public Libraries and Museums Act, which is, of course, still good law. And I'm absolutely confident that this County Council provides a comprehensive and efficient library service, not just to the good people of Redditch, but to every single resident across Worcestershire. And we have a very good story and narrative to tell in respect of all of our 21 libraries, right from Redditch in the north and down to Broadway in the south. And I need to make it absolutely clear as to what our role is in all of this. And as the leader alluded to when he declared an interest in respect of being involved in the Towns Board, Redditch Borough Council have bid for a quantum of cash that they have been successful with from central government. And they have a quantum of cash in order to redevelop their town centre. And indeed, they have an aspiration to open up part of the town centre where our current library is situated, and indeed try and attract more customers, residents, businesses for economic regeneration and the nighttime economy purposes. Now, those, of course, are matters for the Borough Council to deal with, indeed, in terms of our role, what I want to ensure happens is that we have a library service that is as efficient and effective and as accessible as is currently where it is. Now, the proposal would, of course, see our library effectively replicated within Redditch Town Hall across 4 floors, indeed with basement storage for some of the archives as is now. And as the report very clearly sets out, in my judgment and the professional advice that I've received from my Assistant Director for Communities and indeed officers within the library team, we can re-provide what we provide now to the residents of Redditch and the wider community within a new building. And page 6, paragraph 19 sets out the existing area within Redditch, and this effectively would be proposed, and in fact there's a modest increase in the term of the square meterage. Much of the concern, it strikes me, is in respect of, whether there would still be the availability of the meeting rooms and all of the user groups that are there, and absolutely the provision would have to be replicated, and it would have to be as accessible as it is now. And the report also deals with the commercial arrangements, and in fact there are some commercial arrangements to be settled still, and that's why there's a delegation in little d. But at a high level, of course, we own the freehold title of where the library is. We're going to continue under these proposals to hold the freehold title and grant Redditch Borough Council a 125-year lease upon them, which is pretty standard in these type of transactions. And indeed, in return, we would also have a 125-year lease on the town hall granted to us. Indeed, we, of course, as no difficulty with being open and transparent, clearly have a substantial rental income from the DWP, as set out in Table 1, and those matters would continue. The availability of bookings and charges and meeting costs would remain as is, and it's important that we remind ourselves that in terms of Worcestershire County Council's perspective, this would be at nil cost. It strikes me that in terms of our role, and there were a number of public speakers on Tuesday at the scrutiny meeting, and I thank all of the members of the public and indeed members of the OSPB board and Councillor Wells for his very able chairing of it, that most of the public participants and their contributions were really matters for the borough and not for us. Our role is to ensure that there's a proper consultation process, and this is now the formal part of the journey. I say now, as I did on Tuesday afternoon, that I, and I'm sure my Cabinet colleagues, will very much be in listening mode, because we want to hear what the public have got to say about this, and there will be a divergence of views. And of course, absolutely, we will have due regard for that. There were questions posed on Tuesday afternoon about whether we would, make the public consultation responses public, and whether they would get to see what is said. Well, absolutely, this will be a proper, formal, open and transparent process that will follow the rules that need to be followed, because absolutely we would want to ensure that it is legal and it is very, very clear. And obviously the Equality Act and our public sector equality duty will all be factored into that, and indeed paragraph 29 makes reference to it, the joint impact assessment. There was one member of the scrutiny board that suggested that perhaps we weren't capable of being able to carry out our own consultation, and it needs to be independent. Well, in all the years that I've been on the Cabinet and member of this council, I think that actually we're more than capable of carrying out a fair, independent process ourselves without the need to go to external, independent people. Because after all, if our process is flawed, I'm sure that someone will want to jump on board and judicially review us. And of course, that is the last thing that I believe would be the case, because I know that we will do it properly. We will make the consultation process as open as possible, as accessible as possible. There'll be drop-in events at Redditch. You'll be able to do the survey online. You can be assisted to do it at the library. You can have a paper copy. We will facilitate those who are hard of hearing, who are visually impaired, those whose English isn't their first language. But we will ensure that the survey and the consultation process is as accessible to all. And all of the results will come back in a report which will obviously be considered by the community's scrutiny panel in advance of any report coming back before a Cabinet meeting next May. So I wanted to reassure everybody that it will be a full consultation process. So with that, Chairman, I've moved the recommendations and look for a seconder.
Thank you, Marcus. Andy.
Yeah, I formally second the recommendation. Councillor Hart has outlined the proposals and the technicalities. I don't intend to go over there, but if I may just for a few minutes put things into a bit of context. And I need to go back in time, because in the late Queen's Silver Jubilee, I was for a time the officer in charge of Redditch Fire Station. And the town was still being built then. I mean, it was extraordinary. We had the library was a year old, along with the shopping centre. It had an absolutely unique highway. In that shopping centre, as I remember, and I don't think I'd ever heard of this before, it had plants, palm trees in the shopping centre, totally new, and it was a very exciting and futuristic town. Now the borough has got, £15.6 million, and they're looking again to see what was innovative in 1977, whether that can now be improved on, which I think is a quite reasonable thing to do. However, as Marcus has explained, we have responsibilities regarding library, and we see the library as an essential part of what Redditch has to offer. So of course we've got to tread cautiously. There are certain things that caveats, you might say. We've made sure that the library space is as it will be. We don't want to see a reduction in the library service, but we also want to see that the wider library service is served, and being parochial about that, that might mean the library being able to facilitate a family hub, which is where we're going to with meeting people's needs. So it's only on that basis, on establishing those factors, we're going to have the library, same space, same service, enhanced service. Only on that basis that we're looking to move forward on consultation. Taking the views of the community, that's the users, but also hopefully potential users. And there will be different views. I'm sure some will say that unless you change things, you don't get change. That's it. You know, you can't leave everything as it is forever. And others, we have to accept, will have a different view. I mean, it's what the library is what Adrian and I might think of as being our-reg. You know, it's that dated. But there are some who might see that as being outdated, and others might see it as being classic. And we've got to be prepared for that view. So it's not for me to have an opinion. What it is for me to do is to second Marcus's proposal that we give a voice to the people of Redditch. And just in passing, from my experience all those years ago, I saw the people of Redditch as being Worcestershire's pioneers. So I think they're worth listening to. And I hope that through that listening and reaction to what you say, we can reach a proper resolution.
Thank you, Andy. With the proposition being moved and seconded, I wonder whether I can bring in Emma Stokes, because Emma is the chair of the relevant panel, which is the Corporate and Comms, but importantly she also sits on OSPB and has agreed to feedback on behalf of OSPB, and I hear you had a busy and comprehensive meeting. So give us some of that feedback, Emma.
Oh, thank you, Cabinet, and it's lovely to be here. Yes, it was an exciting meeting on Tuesday, and I do sit before you as chairman of the Corporate and Communities panel. Although the board actually went to Redditch, I was there in the capacity as the chairman of the Corporate and Communities, and it was an exciting afternoon. Firstly, I would like to thank Redditch Borough Council for hosting the board and the public meeting, and for their bravery in pursuing the economic growth plans created by the Town Centre Board, and for securing 15 million government funding to do exciting and advantageous work for Redditch Town. So congratulations to Redditch on securing that funding. I also thank the board, the OSPB board, for the concise and direct questioning of the Redditch Borough Council leader, that's Councillor Matt Dormer, and to Councillor Marcus Hart and Hannah Perrow for their professional responses despite political banners and rude taunts from a certain minority. It's always distressing when the best for the public is actually devolved into a political game. The board's questioning tried in the main to remain within the remit, but inevitably we did stray into the wider Borough Council plans. And I do have a list of potential questions that arose from that meeting, which I believe Marcus will be aware of. But in essence, he has mentioned them quite succinctly earlier on, and our main concern is that the consultation process is taken seriously, it is held in a competent and inclusive manner, and I believe this council has a history of listening to people, and I'm sure it will continue to listen to the people of Redditch. They do have a lot of sensible comments. I was very impressed with how the majority of the people handled themselves at that meeting. So I present those comments to Marcus, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Emma. That's most illuminating, actually, in terms of some of the issues that were brought up and the wider plans that were considered. So I wonder whether I can open it up in terms of any other, firstly, take Cabinet colleagues and then wider participants. So I'll bring in Mike.
Thank you, Leader. As members here will know, I was, until May 2022, a member of Redditch Borough Council's Executive Committee, so I've been familiar with the bid as part of the Towns Fund, which is the genesis of the report that comes before us today. You'll also know that the good people of Churchill, in their wisdom, decided to relieve me of any potential conflicts of interest by removing me from that council. So I speak today mostly... Yes, indeed. So I speak today mostly from the County Council's perspective. That means I'm not going to, as others have not, speak to the wider vision and business case for the regeneration of Redditch Town Centre, of which I'm very supportive. Indeed, I coined the phrase Unlock Redditch back in 2017, and I was delighted about the £15 million of investment coming in, and I think it's a fantastic job that's been done there. But it's the Borough Council's role to decide what it wants to do with its town centre, and it's ours as a County Council to decide what we want to do with our library service there. As colleagues have pointed out, the request to relocate the service has come from the Borough Council. Their whole executive has voted in favour of the package that accompanies it, and they've done so with eyes wide open. They know that they have to sell the vision. They're in speaking mode. We're in listening mode. And we've seen the passions, and Councillor Stokes talked about that at the local council meetings, although perhaps there's a limit to those passions, because I know there's not a single member of that Labour Party that was so vociferous at the OSPB meeting here today to make representation to us as the Cabinet, as a decision-making body. But I'm grateful to see that the leader of the Borough Council is here in support of the plans and proposals. So I think that says a lot. But it is right that people have a sense of pride and ownership over their library service. We value the very high regard that people place within the library service, and any part of change is important to take people with you on the journey, complete with all that passion that they show along the way and the noise that they may make. So that's why it's important we're here today, being fully open and transparent about the position that the County Council has set out in its report. I note, for instance, that we're requiring there's no reduction in space and stipulations on the look and feel of the move of the service in future. And I'm seeing positive things about this in the report. We're hiding nothing, and the report demonstrates that. So the next step, as I understand it, is to see what people of Redditch and Worcestershire think about it via a 90-day full statutory public consultation with face-to-face, online and full engagement opportunities. And that's a really good opportunity for the people of Redditch and Worcestershire to have a say on these proposals. They'll be able to take a closer look, explore the details, and let us know if this is something they support for their town. And I would argue they should support it for their town. As my colleague, Councillor Roberts, said that you know, Redditch has a history of being pioneering, and I would call on them to be pioneering today. But as we know, this is an important opportunity for people to have their say. We are accountable to the people. It's important that we involve them in the process, and we have to have due regard for the outcome. So I implore people to make sure that they do feed into that process. But above all, let's all keep working together like we have done. Let's all keep unlocking the potential of Redditch Town Centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I'll just look whether there's any other Cabinet speakers first, and if not, then I wonder whether there are any other speakers that want to make any comment. Bring in Matt. Matt.
Hello, thank you, and thank you for allowing me make comment today. Obviously, I'm here in support of the library regeneration project. Yes, you're right, it is part of the 16.6 million pot of money we got from government. And it is an actual integral part of our regeneration of the town. By the removal of the building and relocation to of the library into our town hall, that will become part of a community hub which will massively benefit the town and the people of the town. The removal of the building itself will improve the footfall. It will improve flow. We have a phenomenal asset in the Kingfisher Shopping Centre, which has in the region of 20,000 movements of people of a weekend. Those people don't venture outside, and this will hopefully be a removal of a blocker that will allow them to wander outside and engage with the businesses that are around our Church Green, which again is a lovely attraction but doesn't see enough footfall. And I think then once we can improve the footfall in that area, that will inevitably help fill up some of those empty shops, because we'll have businesses want to trade in that area because of the increased footfall. And yeah, so that's basically it in a nutshell, really. I don't want to stray into the rest of the town's fund, because the key part is the library for me today. And I do urge all of the residents of Redditch, if they are listening, to fill the survey in, engage positively, keep your eyes open, and you know, keep an open mind and look at the plans, because the plans are fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Any other speakers? Matt again. Two Matts.
Two Matts, taking over. Thank you, Simon. Not being a resident of Redditch, don't know all the details behind this. Obviously, I know there's arguments for and against. I was just wondering about the lengthy consultation, which is obviously good. I'm wondering what would happen if, for example, there is within that consultation a kind of a high proportion who are against the move. Obviously, I know by the sound of it, it's the Borough Council's decision. How would that kind of end up being passed back to the Borough Council? I mean, if there's a lot of, you know, vociferous arguments against it, what happens then, I suppose? Thank you.
I'll look to Marcus maybe to pick that up in terms of summarising, but I'll see whether there's any other points first in terms of any other speakers. But no, okay. Marcus, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good question, Matt. And I do love your shirt. I don't think I could ever get away with wearing one like that, though. But certainly not at Cabinet. But it's a good question, and it was touched upon on Tuesday. And of course, far be it from me to start speculating and predicting on what the outcome of a consultation might be. It'd be very unwise of a politician to start to preempt what the public might think. But of course, I will just make the point that it's a consultation, it's not a referendum, and we will consider and have full due regard for the consultation, and I look forward to all of the good people of Redditch and the wider community taking the opportunity to tell us exactly what they think between the 7th of November this year and the 24th of February next year, which is a full clear 90 days, even taking into account the Christmas and New Year period. As I said, and thank you for everyone's comments, we are very much in listening mode.
Okay, if there are no other speakers, maybe I'll sum up. I would absolutely encourage people across Redditch and wider Worcestershire that might have a view to engage, keep an open mind, to have a look at the proposals, and to let us know their views, because we're absolutely committed to making sure, as we all are, that we have a comprehensive library service across Worcestershire. We're very proud we've kept the 21 libraries we've got open. There are no plans to change that whatsoever as part of this. So the library service will remain in Redditch and be accessible, as Marcus has said. And this is about its precise location and makeup in terms of that. So keep an open mind, engage in the process. As Marcus said, we're in listening mode, and we want to hear what people have to say. And we're going to do this properly. I want to reassure scrutiny of that as well for the comments who were made. I'm proud of our council in terms of the way it engages and listens, and I'm proud of our officers as well. So I have no problem in terms of the council undertaking this. I absolutely would want to put on record that I wouldn't support another agency doing it. We're an independent council. We can run our own consultations. Therefore, that's not something we wish to take up, although it was, as you made clear, Emma, a remark was made during the OSPB meeting. So are we all in support of starting the journey of consultation, colleagues? Thank you so much. And it would be a shame not to continue in the Redditch vein, so I wonder whether we could take the Redditch item, Redditch railway station, which is an exciting proposal, another exciting proposal for Redditch. Next, colleagues, I know that's out of step but it would seem sensible. And I'll bring in Mark.
Good morning, Leader, and good morning, everybody else. I'm delighted to be able to formally present this paper, as you said, continuing the Redditch theme, the town of my birth. I'm delighted to be able to move this project and the positive improvement that this will deliver to the railway quarter within Redditch, which hasn't changed very much in my 50 years and certainly needs further improvement in investment, and this authority has committed to doing that as part of its corporate plan and as part of our manifesto in terms of regenerating areas right across this county. So let me formally move the recommendation standing in my name 1A through to H that will move this project forward. What does that do? I'm asking you to note the progress and support the redevelopment of the railway station, acknowledge the outcome of the options appraisal around the station, acknowledge the estimates of the construction of the new station and associated works, to allocate 10 million of funding for the delivery of the station from the capital programme, which we already have, a pot of approximately 11 million, authorises the director to obtain tenders for the works, and authorises the director, in consultation with myself, to enter into contracts for the construction and to also negotiate with the Borough Council on their land in terms of the public realm, and also to enter into asset protection agreement with Network Rail and other agreements as required to enable the construction of the station and related works on their land. Why is this important? Well, the railway quarter in Redditch is an important part of the town. It has well in excess of 1 million visitors a year, and the railway quarter is a strategic gateway which will preserve and enhance the character of the surrounding area and provide better integration between the station and the town centre. We set a number of objectives which are set out in 9A through to G, creating a modern, attractive gateway for the better experience for commuters and visitors, creating that multimodal interchange with accessibility for all, enhancing the amenities at the station, enabling and supporting the growth in terms of passenger numbers, greater connection between the town centre and the railway quarter, creating a safe and secure environment for all users, very important, and creating a sustainable and green environment and reducing carbon construction, and the regeneration of and the development of the land associated with it. Officers have worked hard on this and come up with a series of potential options which have been appraised. We've come forward with an option which we think significantly improves the outlook and the facilities that are available there. What will the option that we're proposing do? An attractive and accessible impression, a first impression for visitors to Redditch, improve integration between the station and the Kingfisher Centre and the bus station. It will be a new two-storey, we will erect a new two-storey station, modern, fit for purpose, better facilities for passengers. It'll enhance amenities there. It will create that better link with Unicorn Hill, and the public realm that is outside the station will be very much improved, give a better, as I say, a better impression of Redditch when you come by train, and create that greater linkage between the two. We will have improved storage, cycle storage, to promote active travel, improved drop-off and pick-up facilities within the car park, and as I said, new and improved public realm. The monies, the estimated cost of this project is about £10 million. As I said, we have £11 million set aside in our existing capital programme, so it will use the majority of that, but this was always envisaged as the largest of those of the schemes that we had foreseen in this period. In terms of planning, we as the Strategic Highways Authority will be responsible for the planning. We will do that in consultation with Redditch Borough Council, and we will engage with a series, all of our key stakeholders in developing the detail of this proposal. Overall, I think this is a real marked step forward. We've seen how regenerated train stations, how popular they are, how they make the environment so much better in Bromsgrove, in Kidderminster and elsewhere. And I really commend this to the Council and to Cabinet today.
Thank you, Mark. Mike.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And I formally second the proposals as outlined. I think it's important to emphasise that this project feeds into the wider regeneration of Redditch, and particularly the town centre. And we just heard on the previous item, we touched on that very gently. So it's important to take this in context, that there's a bigger picture around the regeneration. When the report was published and duly put onto social media, I did have a look at some of the comments and feedback that the public were posting about it, and by and large I have to say the plans seem to be well received. I think what concerned me though was an overwhelming sort of sense of, led by one of the Birmingham Mail, I'll call them out, because they said that it was supposedly some sort of tourist attraction to try and attract people to come to Redditch. And I think they got the wrong end of the stick there. Nobody has ever said that this train station would in itself attract people to Redditch. It is the means by which people come to Redditch to see the other attractions. And indeed, we can see over the weekend the Canopies, a very good Digbeth dining event there that was very well attended, and there's also obviously the plans for the library space, and also the Palace Theatre, the Needle Museum, and so on. So there's plenty to come and see in Redditch, and of course there's a well-attended college and so on. So it's not about attracting people, but making an attractive arrival experience for them when they get in to the town. And it says at 9A in the report, a modern, attractive gateway and customer experience for commuters and visitors. And I think that's why the news outlets perhaps got the wrong end of the stick on that. And there were generally some other good comments left as well, for instance, around security and safety, which again is touched on in the report. You know, will it be well lit, and will there be emergency help points and so on? And the answer to that is yes, of course. Will there be electric vehicle chargers in the car park? Yes, of course. So we are building a station for the future here, and I think that's important to stress as well, is that we are making room for a second platform, second line in the future. It's important that people recognise that that's not going to be an immediate thing that's going to come, but if we're going to build a new train station, we might as well build it in a way that allows for future growth and expansion. I think it's really important to talk about the wider Redditch Rail Quarter, and that's touched on at point 10 in the report, because this is very much the first phase, and there will be future phases which will incorporate the buildings that surround the site, for instance, and what we wish to do about those. But rest assured that, as I am assured, that we will be doing something with those buildings to ensure that the flow from the rail quarter up Unicorn Hill is as good as it can be. And I note that the public realm works as part of the Towns Fund as well will see significant spending on Unicorn Hill itself, including segregated cycle provision from Unicorn Hill down to the train station. And of course I was delighted to see provision for active travel and cycle storage within the plans as well. We know that the latent demand is there for Redditch train station. There were millions of movements in the years prior to the pandemic. That has now fallen to, I believe, the region of 200,000 movements, so a very sharp drop following the pandemic, but then it started to climb again. And of course it's encountered a second dip because of the continuous and ongoing industrial action that's affected rail travel. But as soon as the boot of the trade unions is released from the neck of the commuter, they will bounce back in lively spirit and rejoin the railways and continue their commute. So I have no doubt that this is building a station for the future, and I'm really excited about the public realm improvements, and the really quite striking architectural design of the station as well is something to be noted. Above all, as colleagues have touched on, about investment into other areas, and I say this in regards to people that say that there's nothing to do in Redditch. If we don't invest in Redditch, who will? You know, we've got to make sure that this is a vibrant town, and we're seeing that both councils are investing heavily into the future of Redditch, and that will attract other investment opportunities, other businesses, because people and investors will see that Redditch is going somewhere. This is a good place to come and do business. So all of the facilities and things that people say they want will arrive if we stimulate investment. And that's our job as a council, to stimulate and kickstart that investment. I say to them, don't speak so ill of your town. It's a fantastic little town, and with a little bit of investment improvement that we're providing through this, it will be an even better town. This is very much Redditch's turn to look ahead. We've had the new town phase over the last 60 years. What's next for Redditch in terms of the next 60 years? And this is the start of that journey in creating the second generation of a new town for Redditch. So I fully support the plans before us today and encourage everybody to support them, as well as the wider public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I'll just look whether there's any other speakers from Cabinet first, but if not any others. Oh, Adam.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. While you were talking, I was researching the history of Redditch train station and the number of times it's been improved through its period or whatever else. And I think it's quite interesting that it only just escaped barren beaching, I believe, in terms of the termination of it. And looking at the investment that we continue to make in railways, I'm sure the gentleman would be turning in his grave, really, because we're rapidly putting back and investing into things that really in the past have been culminated. So I'm really pleased to see these improvements. I actually live closer to Redditch than I do to Bromsgrove and Worcestershire, and do visit the Kingfisher Centre regularly, and I think anything that can continue to see us levelling up across Worcestershire is to be gratefully received. And I'm particularly pleased to see the investment in rail, because I think as part of our policy of transport and injection of active travel, obviously you've got the scooters flying around Redditch already. It will make it for a much more enjoyable situation for both those visiting Redditch and going into the Kingfisher Centre, and also those leaving.
Thanks, Adam. I absolutely agree with that. Just seeing if there's any other members of the Cabinet, if there's any other speakers who want to contribute. Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely in support of this. The train station's very tired. It's poorly lit. It's, you know, the amenities there, you know, they could be a lot better. I think this is the gateway. This is the first piece that people see when they arrive to Redditch via the train, and it should be far better than it is. This will make that happen. It is the gateway up to our town centre. It's part of the wider regeneration. And as Councillor Rowe said, it will tie into the public realm work that starts in March next year, I believe, and tails all the way down to the train station. So it will start to knit together very nicely and be far more appealing to anybody wishing to come to the town. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I absolutely echo those views as well. Matt.
Matt show today. Fully supportive, particularly highlighting the extra cycle parking and that side of things, obviously, and trains is a really important part of getting away from driving. My only question, just again, don't know Redditch very well, just having a look at the kind of Google Maps and looking at the kind of the routes to get there, but when you're cycling, because obviously it's great when you've got cycle parking, but how safe is it to get there? So I did see some white lines. I'm sure I saw a few bollards making it safe, which is great. So I'm just wondering what plans there are to maybe improve on the existing cycle infrastructure to get to the train station, maybe some kind of a few of those ones just to protect those existing cycle routes. Thank you.
Yeah, fair question, Matt. Don't know whether who wants to pick it up, but I think I would say as part of the wider regeneration, we've talked to the Towns Board, in fact, about how we make sure that sustainable travel is a key aspect within Redditch, because obviously as a new town, it's built very much around the car, and you can see that in terms of the highway infrastructure. And these proposals are about making sure that we have that sustainable gateway in terms of people coming by train, but also we want to make sure that we improve all modes, and clearly walking, cycling in terms of the public realm will be very much covered off as part of that. But I'm sure Mike could go into a level of detail that I do not possess.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm grateful for it because it gives me the opportunity to point out that the bus is important in that as well, because there is the bus interchange, and the flow from the train station will go straight across into the bus station as well. So I think it's important to remember that. At the moment, you have to go up the stairs, and there's a tight crossing, the pedestrian crossing and everything. It will just flow straight across. And I think it'll be up to the bus operators and the Kingfisher Centre to decide how they wish to respond to that new environment that we present them with. I think it's also important to stress that there have been recent upgrades to Bromsgrove Road. So as you approach the train station from one direction, there is cycle provision, cycle lanes either side of the road there, and that's also going to be implemented around Unicorn Hill, which will be the other direction that you come to the train station from as well. So sort of the roads leading up to the train station will be adapted as best we can. I think there's a challenge within that because one thing I noticed, for instance, is the tendency for car drivers to park in the cycle lanes that we've put in. So I think there is challenges around how we tackle that and try and discourage that behaviour. But again, that's being looked at and examined, and that falls into the wider active travel piece and the conversation that we're having with Active Travel England and the government around funding to help us in that area. But Redditch is the highest proportion for bus users, for public transport users in the county, for instance, because that's how it was designed with the dedicated bus road that goes through half of the, well, in fact, all of the Newtown development. So I do see this being a vibrant multimodal interchange incorporating walking, cycling, e-scooters, bus, and have I missed anything? Within there. I did ask the question whether we could... roller skates, indeed. You can have roller skates, skateboards, we can have those as well. I did ask the question about drones, whether with the future of passenger transport drones, but I was told that that's a little bit too far, too fanciful for the moment. But it's safe to say that we are considering all angles on this, particularly active travel interchange. Thank you.
I also know that to be absolutely true, Mike, in terms of your questioning of drone transport of the future, and I think that demonstrates for me how we're looking ahead actually in these proposals to make sure we have a really sustainable gateway location for Redditch. It links in very much with the town's board plan, which had 5 key themes really, and the station being one of them, and we're delivering as Worcestershire County Council on that. I think we've got a great history as a County Council improving rail. Colleagues have mentioned Bromsgrove. Worcestershire Parkway is a brand new station, Malvern Link a few years ago, Kidderminster. So this is one of a whole suite of improvements we're delivering on rail, because it's a very important mode, and we want to make sure that feel as you arrive in Redditch from the train station that you're naturally linked into the Redditch town centre in a much better way, a much more integrated way than we have at the current time. So I'm very excited about these proposals. I've been a keen supporter of them. I'm glad to see them move into delivery phase. But I'll just see whether there's any other colleagues. Adrian.
Just a very quick one, Kevin. I mean, one of the things that I have noted in the past, of course, is this line is already electrified, which is, a start in the county, because obviously we continue to press for electrification of the southwest all the way through Bromsgrove down to Cheltenham, Barra, etc., because electrification of the railway is the future. And we already have the future at Redditch, so it makes absolute sense to me that we invest considerable sums of money in upgrading this station, so that the demand gets to, I think the service is every half an hour at the moment, and we go back to the 20-minute service, which with electric trains is reliable, efficient, clean, and much less carbon than the other rolling stock that we are forced to use across the county. So, we've already got a flying start on this, in that we have electrification already in.
Absolutely agree with that, and we hope that working with the rail industry that obviously that we can improve train services, because the stations are key facet, but we want the services to match the new stations that we've invested in as well. So I think we've got broad support for this, colleagues. Everyone in favour of the proposal? Brilliant, that's unanimous. Shall we move back to the order of the agenda and then go through the health and wellbeing strategy. Now, Karen, this is
Thank you very much, Chairman.
a really important strategy for the County Council.
Absolutely is important. Good morning, Cabinet, and thank you very much, Chairman. I'm delighted to launch Worcestershire's joint local health and wellbeing strategy for 2022 to 2032. This strategy is a call to action to accelerate our efforts to improve mental health and wellbeing and prevent mental health in Worcestershire. Ill health, sorry. We will do this by taking collective action on the things we all need to have good mental health and well-being. We want our children to have the best start in life, our young people to have hope and aspiration for their futures, and for all of us to live longer and more independent lives in good health with fewer people going in to need care and support. Prevention is the key to these efforts. We need to prevent people becoming unwell in the first place, prevent the escalation of ill health if it occurs, and ultimately prevent dependency on the health and social care system. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has affected all of us in different ways and has widened health inequalities in health outcomes between the best and the worst off in our county. We will maintain a relentless focus on addressing these disparities, enabling people to be socially and financially independent and able to meet the challenges that arise over the coming years. My thanks go to every one of you who responded to our consultation and helped to shape the shape of this strategy. We received 1,627 responses to the survey and held over 30 focus groups with a range of community groups and organisations. There was a strong agreement with the priority areas proposed by the Health and Wellbeing Board: good mental health and wellbeing supported by action on the wider determinants of good mental health. Healthy living at all ages is where the result is. Safe, thriving and healthy homes, communities and places, and quality local jobs and opportunities. We will continue to engage with people who live and work in Worcestershire over the lifetime of this strategy, and this strategy will go back to the Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee on an annual basis. We want to ensure we adapt to the changing needs in our local communities. We've got a huge task ahead of us. Please join me and all the members of the Health and Wellbeing Board as we work together to make a difference to the health, well-being and prosperity of everyone in Worcestershire. And I'd like to move the recommendations now that the Cabinet Member with responsibility for health and wellbeing recommends that Cabinet ratify the final draft of the Worcestershire Joint Local Health and Wellbeing Strategy 2022 to 2032 and note that the Joint Local Health and Wellbeing Strategy will form a significant part of the Integrated Care Strategy. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Adrian.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It gives me great pleasure to be able to second this. And I do actually think that in some ways it answers a question that was posed earlier on, although indirectly, was, is the County Council capable of running consultations? Because if I reflect back on health service consultations, one of the things that I have noticed about them is a limited response. And here we ran a formal 12-week consultation that had a fantastic response from the public. Over 1,627 replies is a really good response for what is actually a pretty complex and technical consultation to a large degree. And out of this clearly came one priority, which is listed in the paperwork, which is good mental health and well-being. And I have to say I absolutely fully support the conclusion of the consultation and the effects that this consultation is going to do. Because what this paper does is it creates a vision that I think has been lacking for some years as to the direction that we are going to take health services and indeed public health and the other factors that are in it, housing, well-being, leisure. There are an absolute range of other things that we have struggled, in my view, to bundle up and make them into a coherent vision. And so we will be, taking action as it says in paragraph 11, on the wider determinants of health and tackling health inequalities. Because those of you who can remember the CPA assessment, we got 4 stars, if you remember, and that was a great success. The only negative, they said, was we had some of the worst health disparities in the country. Over 12 and a half years between one part of Whithaven, I've said the bit I actually represent, and part of Redditch. And they thought this was unacceptable. And I'm afraid to say, ladies and gentlemen, that I think the progress on resolving this has not been as fast as we would have liked. So what this is doing is it's absolutely focusing on the bit in social care that we think is really important, which is prevention and enabling our residents to live longer, more independent lives, as it says in paragraph 12, with fewer people going on to need care and support. And I think that's an absolutely vital message, that we continue to press the prevention agenda with as much vigour and enthusiasm as we can do. And of course, what else this now does is it gives direction to the new Integrated Care Partnership, who are responsible for joining up the services across. So the NHS to local authorities, our community and voluntary sector partners, will be meeting the health needs of our population. But now they have a clear and coherent strategy all to work with and to work for. It also places, I think, quite a bit of duty, actually, on the Health and Wellbeing Board as chaired by Karen, because we are going to be absolutely vigorous in how we monitor this plan going forward. And while I know the time frame of the plan, and I had some criticisms in the past over the time frame of the plan, I think a 10-year time frame is quite a long period, frankly. But I am reassured by the Cabinet member that, now we have vision and direction. The plan will be reviewed on a regular basis, and I think she might pick that up in her final reports. So, I regard this as being a really landmark document. And as you can tell, Liga, I'm extremely enthusiastic and 100% behind it. And so if I could just finally thank, our previous director, Kath Cobain, who sort of kicked this on. But more importantly, I see Liz Alto over there and Tanya Richardson, I know, have played a really strong role. But also Karen for her leadership on this issue, because I think we now have vision, direction, and I'm convinced that order will be following soon.
Thank you, Adrian. That's a really good summary, actually, in terms of how important this document is, and we were discussing just before the meeting as how I regard it as a sort of cornerstone of what we're doing in health and wellbeing, putting prevention very much at the heart of our efforts. So I do think that's an excellent summary between both of you. I'll look to see whether there's any other Cabinet speakers, and the first one I've got is Richard.
Thank you, Leader. Morning, Cabinet. I too think this is a landmark document, and I really appreciate the words that Karen said, and Adrian too, on it. And what it is for me, it is this prevention, and the shift into prevention is so critical for the future and to help the health and well-being of people in Worcestershire. And being the CMR for environment, obviously I'm really, really pleased to see that environment has a big focus in that health and well-being agenda for the future. The section with your local environment is critical, I think, for people and their quality of life and coming out of COVID and leading to the future. Linking to the access to green spaces and air quality cannot be underestimated, and the benefits that people have reaped from being outdoors during COVID and then post-COVID, and the benefits that brings them, and their access and enjoyment of our brilliant countryside in Worcestershire. So I think 1,600 plus responses is remarkable and a real credit to the consultation. But more than anything, it is that preventative nature that we're trying to move on. I think is terrific.
Thanks, Richard. Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Just briefly to also speak in support of this, and from a transport perspective as well, because I think it is does play a role. It is important. So I was delighted to see on page 20 of the strategy, for instance, a spotlight on community transport and the benefits that provides. And the quote says, "Community transport has given me back my independence." And that demonstrates, I think, succinctly what good transport provision can do. And I'm very grateful to our community transport providers for everything they do in that area as well. And of course, active travel, the key word being active, is important for us to promote as well. So more opportunities for people to move. And one of the things I've floated at previous committees and in my work is around inclusive cycling hubs where people can go who need to perhaps build their confidence or try out specified specialist cycles, and they can do so at leisure destinations such as Arrow Valley Country Park or Worcester Woods and so on. It gives them an opportunity to try before they buy and to build their confidence in cycling, because actually we need to make sure that people of all abilities and people with who are differently abled also feel empowered to embrace cycling, for instance, as well. So I think transport does play an important role in feeding in to this strategy, and the two can go hand in hand. So very pleased to see that transport did get a mention in here. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any other contributors from the Cabinet? Any other contributors outside? No? I think, Karen, did you want to sum up and pick up the review point as well, which I think was
yeah,
posed?
and thank you for the kind comments from Cabinet members. This is an all-evolving strategy. It will keep evolving. It's not a document that will stay still, and I don't envisage the same document from 2022 being the same as in 2032. Our population and our population needs, they change. But I absolutely, fully endorse this. This is the way forward with a clear vision, and our health colleagues are very much in favour of this. And I have to say, it was unanimously supported by the whole of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and it's going to be reviewed on an annual basis by our Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee too, with the data behind it. To have an impact on prevention, you've got to look around 10 years. Every medical profession tells me that. So I think this is the right time scale. It's an evolving document, and I'm excited about this. This is the one opportunity we have to really impact on our residents' lives and their outcomes. So welcome and propose the recommendations being seconded by Councillor Hardman. I thank you all for your support, and I look forward to working with everyone across the integrated care system to bring this strategy to life. This is an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I certainly endorse those last remarks around it really has tentacles into all the other things we do, because they're the determinants of public health, aren't they? And so looking at how we influence all those things that people do each and every day that has such a massive impact on their long-term health is so important. So, and I'll just underscore that the efforts you made, and I know the team made, to engage people in something that sometimes feels amorphous, doesn't it, in these strategies, but to get the level of response that we had, I think is pretty remarkable, and it underscores what we do in terms of really good consultation. So hopefully that reassures people in relation to a previous agenda item where maybe that was questioned. So are we all, who's in favour of this one? I think we can absolutely get a unanimous here. Thank you so much, Cabinet colleagues. So we'll move to Children and Young People's Plan, another important cornerstone document. Andy.
Thank you, Simon. I formally move the recommendation, which is at 1, and it won't be lost on colleagues that these proposals sit alongside what we've just been talking about, the Joint Health and Wellbeing Strategy. The plan is complex, but it's been, I believe, it's been simplified to an extent where it is readable and understandable, and it's all the better for that. The priorities it outlines, bearing in mind this is specifically for children, the first is the best start in life, what Councillor May referred to, those all-important 1,000 days. Then there's access to right education, health and social care interventions, particularly with children with special needs. Access to emotional health and well-being, which Adrian explained was a major plank of what we've just agreed. And then working together. Working together, I think, is sort of not only, but is exemplified by our Get Safe system. So what's being considered is, it's a good place to start is where the engine for this is. And I think the engine is probably one that's not very well known about, and that's the Children's Health, Children's Joint Strategy Group. And that deals with things behind closed doors in a way. It deals with the nitty-gritty work that needs to go to feed through to the Health and Wellbeing Board and the Integrated Care System. For that purpose, this needs to be a usable document, and that's why I'd like to particularly thank those who've looked at it. The Health and Wellbeing Board have accepted it, but I'm particularly grateful to those who scrutinised this document and simplified what was an incredibly complicated piece of work. So I mentioned the Children and Young People Strategic Partnership. That looks at safeguarding, early help, SEND and all-age disability and mental health. So it's bringing together social care, public health, health and education. So you might say, so what? So you've got this document which is going to be put on a shelf and never read again. Well, that's not the case, because as part of the whole, there are key performance indicators which cover things like early help, mental health and emotional factors, all-age disability goals and safeguarding targets. And they're broken down even further into things that we can all recognise and measure. Obviously, I'm not going to go through the list, but they are what you would expect. Whether children are ready for school, whether you have a child obesity problem, is there a problem with absence from school? Are our health plans for those with special needs, are they proper, effective and timely? And then there's also the timeliness of care proceedings. Those are by no means the suite of indicators, but they just sort of give you a flavour for what it's all about. So what at first looks like a rather bureaucratic paper, I think brings together the work of health, education and social care and provides us a working framework to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction. And on that basis, I commend what's before you.
Thank you, Andy. Tracy.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning all. Very, very happy to second the recommendations. And what I like about this document is that, many of us will have sat here and we will have looked at strategies and policies, and they turn into huge, big documents, and we kind of put them on the shelf behind us and we dust them off when they need to be reviewed. And this doesn't happen with this document, because there's a strategic partnership board that sits behind this, that runs through all of the points to ensure that this plan gets rolled out. It follows up with partners around their parts in it as well. It really brings it to life. It encourages all the joint working, because we're all going to need to be joint working when it comes to children and outcomes for children. And it's a way of holding partners to account as well, which we don't always do, and they hold us to account, which is rightly so. So I'm really pleased to see this come forward. I like the format of it, and very happy that it isn't one of those strategies that we just, one of those plans that we just dust off, that it does come to light in that board. So very happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. Any other speakers from the Cabinet first? If not, there are any other speakers from the audience. I think certainly this will be going to Council for formal adoption, so we're moving it on its journey. It's also worth saying that it was considered, I think people said this, by the Health and Wellbeing Board, which is important in terms of private session, and by OSPB as well, and there's some comments I think that were attached at Appendix 6, so I'd want to just note those as well as part of that process. And I think these two papers together demonstrate how we're bringing the corporate plan to life as well, because this is really helping to deliver the children's and families' priority and theme within that plan. And as Tracy remarked, it isn't just the document, it's the activity that sits behind it and the governance structure, very similar in terms of health and well-being as well, which is really important in terms of that organic development, really, of policy that helps to make sure things are happening as a result of it, as opposed to just documents that we note and agree and nod. This isn't very much. It's in a different vein. So, any other thoughts? Otherwise, can we agree this one, colleagues? Okay. We'll move to the next item, which is the Pershore Area Review. Consultation and findings. Tracy.
Thank you very much. So, this report follows on from the report that came to Cabinet in April, and it deals with the changes to the age ranges of schools in the Pershore Educational Planning area. Now, by definition, the changes that are included here would complete the transfer from the current three-tier system of first, middle and high schools to the two-tier system of primary and secondary schools in that planning area. In addition to that, there were also 4 schools that are proposing to change their age ranges to take in either 2, 3 or 4-year-olds. I won't go into all the detail around each individual school because it is all contained in the appendices, but there are 16 schools that come under the Pershore Educational Planning area. That's 6 first schools, 6 primary schools, 1 first and middle school, joint building, 2 middle schools and 1 high school. So we've got the full range. Now, this will inevitably re-raise the question about the intentions of this council towards 2-tier and 3-tier systems. And so I'm going to address that now. I would reiterate that there is no agenda from this council to move whole scale away from middle schools. So we've not got an agenda to attack all our middle schools and to move to a 2-tier system. I mean, it would be ridiculous of me to not look at the national picture and say that things are changing over time, and I'm advised that we're now one of 6 areas that operates 3-tier system because nationally things have moved towards 2-tier. It's also we've got an odd system where some of our middle schools are operating as secondary schools, and I can say that we are the only council that operates a multitude of different tierings, but we have also adopted the approach that the council will go with what the people want to do and what the local schools want to do, and that remains our ethos. And that was the case with Pershore. The local schools and the academy approached the council about could we help them with some of the issues around the current age ranges, and they asked us to coordinate that. Some of the schools had already had their age ranges changed, and that was a decision that was made by the DFE with the Regional Schools Commissioner agreeing for several schools to already convert to primaries, and that was following an application by the MAT. And of course, by consequence, that then had an effect on the middle schools and the first schools, which is why we're completing the process. The other issue that's sort of happening naturally is that over the 3 middle schools in the Pershore EPA, on the roll there should be 247 children and there are actually 136. And as schools are funded by, I don't know how to say it politely, but bums on seats, to coin a phrase, this makes managing the budgets of those schools increasingly more difficult. Across the county, we aim to have a 5% surplus in places. In the Pershore EPA area, this means we have a 34% surplus. So you can see there's a number of reasons. I think it also shows that parents are naturally choosing a 2-tier system, so because the shortages on roll are all down to the middle schools. I just wanted to talk about the consultation because I have said that it is led by the schools and the academies and the people involved. There have been 2 meetings that were held where all the heads of the schools attended, and it was agreed to move forward with the proposals. The next stage was to carry out a consultation. There was an overarching consultation done by the County Council that looked at the whole areas, but then each individual school also consulted with its parents around the changes to their specific school. And I'm pleased to say that 98% of parents felt that they had enough information to make a decision, because it is complex. And we did want to make sure that they knew what they were voting on. And out of those consultations, 78% of parents agreed with the changes. And the top 2 reasons that they agreed, which won't surprise anybody, is that they wanted their children to remain at their first/primary school for 2 years more, and that a 2-tier system requires less transition, and that's been a common theme. Following those consultations, an open evening was held where parents were invited to come to raise any concerns in person. There were no concerns raised at that event. In addition, there were meetings held, and I know the Director of Education went out with the previous Cabinet member and met all the heads of the middle schools. Finally, in the run-up to this Cabinet meeting, a letter has gone out from the Director and myself to all the schools again, the Members of Parliament and the councillors, to offer a further opportunity for anybody to raise anything ahead of this meeting. We've had feedback from one school and they were positive around this, and we haven't had anything else. So, best laid plans, but I am hopeful that this report should come as no surprise to anybody. I know I'm going to regret saying that, but and that all parties involved feel that they've had sufficient opportunities to raise any objections. One point I would like to make is that in respect of vulnerable learners, there are 2 mainstream autism bases, one at Abbey Park and one at Pershore High. There will be no changes to these other than the age ranges, and it should prove to be a clearer system for more vulnerable learners. A number of impact studies have been done. I won't go through them all, but they are all attached in the appendices around the environment, equality, data protection and public health. The final point, as always, is around the money. So in relation to finance, the DFE have agreed to fund the £4.3 million of work at Pershore High School. I say agreed. It is always going to be subject to a business case, and we will ensure that each of our schools, all of the schools, buy into that business case and the process around it. The county have agreed £1.3 million of funding for the works required at Defford, Fladbury, Upton Snodsbury and the Abbey schools. That's in the recommendations. Of the remaining schools, 5 are already primary schools and the remainder are all part of the diocese, and I can't say that for some reason, the Diocese of Worcester, Matt, who have advised that they do not require any additional funding to carry out any necessary changes. So I think we've done as much as we can do at this point. The recommendations are at A to F, and as I said, based on the consultation and the fact that this was brought to us from the schools, I'm happy to recommend this to Cabinet.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing a comprehensive job there, because it's a really important change for children, young people in the area, and parents and the community. So I think we did that justice. I'll bring in Adrian in terms of second.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. If I could just formally second this. And I think what the Cabinet member has brought to light is that we still, of course, academisation removed a lot of duties from the direct control of the County Council. But the County Council still has, in effect, control over structure, educational performance, where it is meant to monitor and challenge, and, of course, provision of school places. And that is the absolute key thing. So, as one of the local members here, I have to say it has been an extremely quiet ride. I've had about 3 or 4 letters from parents in support of this change, who, of course, mainly part of my division, of course, borders another area which is 2-tier. And so if they have one child for some unknown reason going one direction, one often seems to go the other. And parents find it a very confusing system indeed if they are not born and bred in Pershore, Defford or Strensham. So in view of the fact that, in effect, what is happening is some of the schools are already starting to move towards two-tier, which is exactly what they are allowed to do, I think it's absolutely correct that we operate with speed here, and we envisage making the change by 2025. I think it's only right, of course, that I also just acknowledge the DFE's support. I know there is some hesitation, let's put it that way, but I'm delighted to see the new ministerial team in place. It brings back some old friends of Worcestershire who have been very helpful to us in the past, and I'm absolutely sure that they will be helpful again. So I applaud the speed that the Cabinet member is proposing this change. I mean, I know that 3 years seems a long time, but it is a tricky business to re-engineer a school pyramid where you don't have 90 children stood outside the only high school in the pyramid without any places. And if she hadn't have taken the action that she had, I'm pretty sure that is what would have happened. In regard to the 2- and 3-tier debate, I absolutely agree with the Cabinet member that I think this is a debate we will have to have in 25 to 29, I would suggest, is probably the timescale, because I do not envisage the 3-tier system lasting with the way that primary school numbers are falling, because it will just place, I think, greater pressure on us reorganising the system where children will stay longer in rural primary schools before they go on to their high school. And of course the reason for that is because then it will make the rural primaries viable. So on that happy note, can I just say thank you very much indeed, Tracy, for your negotiations, and we move on.
Thank you, Adrian. We'll bring in Marcus.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader, and of course I fully agree with the recommendations and congratulate the current Cabinet Member for Education on bringing to, well, I say a conclusion, but a conclusion now to the next part of the journey and the crucial stage. And I, of course, had a little bit of a hand in this and have lived this journey for the last 2 or 3 years in my previous role as Cabinet Member. And just picking up a few points that both Councillor Onslow and Councillor Hardman have made. And of course, school place planning is one of those statutory duties that the government left with us, which is always a tricky gig, if I can put it in those terms, because of course I spoke with representatives of Pershore High School, and so did our officers several years ago, with their aspiration and ambition to convert from being a high school to a secondary school, and as a matter of principle, no objections, but a clear prediction by us in terms of our footprint across the pyramid that there would clearly be a domino effect, and hence we made strong representations to the RSC at the time about that domino effect. Notwithstanding that, the Regional Schools Commissioner did indeed acquiesce to Pershore High School's request back in 2019 to convert to a secondary school and take Year 7 pupils from September 2021 with a pan of 90 initially, and that's still the current position. And sure enough, that domino effect has kept on coming, and understandably, a large number of the small rural first schools wanted to expand to become a primary school to make their offer better, to make them more financially sustainable. And then, of course, the domino effect, where pupils being kept in their first school, now primary school, for 2 years, has led to a huge, huge surplus in middle school places across the 3 middle schools within the pyramid. Now, I'm not ideologically wedded. I'm sure the head teachers of Bromsgrove will be listening intently to what I'm about to say. Ideologically wedded to whether one has a 2-tier system or a 3-tier system. But the problem is in the Pershore educational planning area, we've neither got a two-tier nor a three-tier system. We've got an absolute mixture. And what I've said previously is what we need is a clear pathway for pupils and their parents that is understandable, because, you know, as a parent, there's nothing worse than not knowing which school your child is going to be going to, and it does cause a lot of angst and nervousness. So people want clear transparency as to what their educational route is going to be. They haven't got that at the moment, but they're going to get it under this proposal. And indeed, the final piece of the jigsaw, and I congratulate Tracy and indeed Tina Russell and Sarah Wilkins for all their work they've done, and indeed Councillor Hardman played a part in some of the negotiations, that we've now finally got a figure out of the DFE, of course always subject to the business case, but we've got £4.3 million together with our own capital contribution to make all of this happen. Indeed, we had already fully undertook the consultation. We'd agreed this was a direction of travel, but our previous report, of course, said we couldn't take it further until we got the funding. And now we have. And finally, Leader, because I think it's important just to reiterate, because as part of the consultation, of course, I think we had three options in terms of the pace of change, but the reality is we've got to do this in a planned, measured and incremental way, and September 2025, I know it's 3 years away, but it'll be here like that, but it will allow a smooth transition and a smooth, clear pathway for pupils, as opposed to them having to make various choices on our in-year admissions. And I'm sure this will also safeguard ourselves from any challenge, because of course we'd be breaching, I think, our own schools' admissions policies and subject to challenge against our own procedure. So with this 3-year transition period as set out in the report, I'm confident that it's the right thing to do, and it's the right thing to do for the young people who will be going through this system, and they will do so in a smooth and planned way as possible. So absolutely support it, and well done to the Cabinet member.
Thanks, Marcus. I'll bring in Tracy maybe just to summarise any points if there are no other speakers. Tracy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I've been very remiss this morning, and I'm going to put it down to not feeling 100%, because I did say that we had only heard from one area, but actually we have heard from a parent as well, and whereas they welcome the change, they have put in a caution about data, and I absolutely take that point on board about how you read data and what data we're using, so I will get that looked into. I've also received a lot of praise this morning, which is unjust, because I have to say a lot of the negotiations have been down to the previous Cabinet member and the director behind me, and the Director of Education, and a number of other people. But I am going to take all the praise, because that's a politician in me. But I just thought I ought to mention that. Finally, thank you very much to the seconder for bringing in the timescale, which I forgot to remark on. So thank you very much about that. But I do have a caution around the phrase quiet ride. And I think it comes in from my previous involvement with West Mercia Police, whereas ever you said the word, oh, isn't it quiet, that would instantly lead to a barrage of issues. So I do have some nervousness around that. But would very much welcome the support that this is receiving this morning. And just to say, if there are any further issues, I'm always welcome to speaking to people about it. So very happy to recommend this.
Thanks, Tracy. And if there are no other comments from the Cabinet, just in summary, I think this demonstrates we put the best interests of children at the heart of what we do, because ultimately what we want is them to have the best start in life, and a good quality education is key to that. And where we see that a system isn't working, and this was very much an organic proposal, it came from the community, it came from those schools, we're willing to get behind it and back it, and try and lobby for the funding, which we've been hopefully successful in securing. So I think it demonstrates the way we like to work with the community, in that grain of the community. And there are always people who disagree, or the particular issues that come along, but ultimately I think it's a strong and compelling case that's being made. So are we all in agreement, colleagues? Yeah. And then finally, I'll move to the Treasury Management mid-year update. I'll move the recommendations 1 little a and b. We always have a mid-year report, so this is up to the 30th September, just to review our Treasury Management, and set out in the report there are a couple of key components there. Obviously, with our investments, it's worth saying that we prioritise security and liquidity over investment return. We have a low risk appetite. I think that's absolutely right in relation to the investments we make. We haven't had some of the issues that perhaps other institutions or councils have had as a result of that very sensible and prudent approach in terms of investment. We are on the borrowing side using internal borrowing and local authority to local authority borrowing, as opposed to taking out in our Public Works Loan Board route, and that's because of the rate of return. It's something that is a cheaper way to borrow, particularly in the short term at the moment, rather than lock in higher rates. But obviously we keep that under review as we move forward. We also note in terms of the loans we have taken out, so that's at 21 little a, £20 million during that period, and 12.5 of debt that's matured. Importantly, we also note the outstanding debt of the authority at the moment, and the relatively low rate actually on that average amount. So it is important that members do have sight of this, and that you're assured that we keep these things under review, Michael and myself, on a regular basis. Important limits are set as well in terms of overall borrowing. We're well within those, both in terms of all of those perspectives that we set. And Table 3 demonstrates how that is in a visual form for people who don't want the numbers, want to look at how we're well within those limits. Majority of debt is secured for the longer term, so it's in the 10 years or over bracket. There's some 80% of that overall debt. So hope that reassures colleagues in terms of the Treasury managed activities of the authority. So move those and look to Marcus.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, I'll simply formally second the recommendations. I think you've set out the report very clearly. We're taking a very sensible and responsible approach in terms of our borrowing and indeed our debt. And the report sets all of the information out very clearly, Leader. So happy to second.
Thank you. And look to any other contributors, and if there are none, can we support that mid-year review? Thank you, colleagues. And that's been a very good Cabinet this morning. Enjoy your day. Take care.